Hello and welcome to the channel. This is the fifth episode where early graduation, a unique bloodline, and an insane teacher set the stage for Naruto's shinobi career. Determined to live life on his own terms, Naruto's knack for taijutsu forces him to ask whether he can truly be a shinobi of Konoha or will he be pushed away forever. Please like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Now, let us begin. Naruto watched Sakura struggle through some physical conditioning exercises. He hadn't expected her to come back the next day with the way she had fled, but here she was. She was a lot quieter, not even speaking to Sasuke, and Naruto wasn't sure if he could trust it. No one changed that quickly, and just because she suddenly got some motivation to put some effort in didn't mean that it would last. Kakashi hadn't shown up yet, so they were training on their own as per usual. He wasn't sure where Sakura had got the training menu since he was positive she wouldn't have been able to find Kakashi between then and now. He guessed she'd made it herself. It contained all of the basic exercises, but they were being done in a weird order, almost as if she was just running through a list rather than working towards specific goals. Whatever, it wasn't his problem. He supposed the fact she was doing anything was the main thing. "I've never seen her allow herself to get dirty before," Sasuke commented beside him from where they were taking a break. "She used to complain about it all the time in the academy." Naruto looked back at the girl, observing the dirt on her cheek and the sweat pouring down her face. "That's not exactly a high bar," he replied, taking a swig of his water bottle. Sasuke shrugged and Naruto rolled his eyes. Kakashi should be arriving soon. Things had been tense yesterday after the whole Sakura situation. He knew Kakashi had all these ideas and beliefs around teamwork and standing up for your comrades, but Naruto didn't have time for it. He didn't see why he had to put up with a weak teammate. Kakashi seemed to think they were only as strong as that weakest link. Naruto thought that was bullshit. "I wasn't wrong about her," he felt the need to say. "No, you weren't," Sasuke said quietly. "She needs to decide if she is going to be a kunoichi or not. What she is doing now is not enough." Naruto may not buy into the whole teamwork thing, but if he was going to be forced onto a team with anyone, he was glad it was Sasuke. He'd known the other boy for a couple of years now, and other than Guy, he was probably the only other person in the village who really knew him. It was the same for Sasuke. Naruto knew he was the only one who saw Sasuke for Sasuke rather than the last Uchiha or the genius genin. He'd seen Sasuke fail and fall on his face so many times, but he kept trying, mastering whatever was in his path with a singular focus. He could respect his hard work. He also had never tried to change Naruto, just dealing with him as he was and giving as good as he got. He appreciated that too. He heard the faint sound of footsteps and steeled himself. He and Kakashi had never managed to find common ground on this topic, and now the man was his Jounin sensei. He was sure that it would keep coming up. He missed Guy. He would just let Naruto get on with things. He knew Kakashi was trying to be a good teacher in his own way, but it wasn't helpful. He wanted things to back to the way they used to be, when Kakashi was his ninjutsu teacher and they didn't have teammates to worry about. "Good morning," Kakashi said brightly. There was a moment of silence as Sakura jogged over to join them, but no late accusation followed. Good, Naruto had no desire to live through that every day. Thus they figure out now that Kakashi would be late to his own funeral. There would be a lot of independent learning as his students. He grinned as Kakashi pouted. He knew the man loved giving his weird excuses for his lateness, but if they didn't ask, then there was no reason for him to say. It was petty, but Naruto thrived on pettiness. It kept him sane. "It's nice to see that you're already training on your own," he continued. "What were you working on?" "Taijutsu," Naruto answered for both him and Sasuke. All eyes turned to Sakura. "I'm working on my fitness," she said, green eyes turned to the ground and shoulders hunched in on themselves. It was like he was looking at a completely different person. All the confidence and bluster was gone, leaving behind a nervous shell. She wasn't wearing perfume today, her pink hair was in disarray and her face shined with exertion. She obviously hadn't spent as much time on her appearance this morning. Naruto wasn't sure this was an improvement. Sure, she was a dead weight when she had been filled with false confidence and entitlement, but she wouldn't be much use without a backbone either. What training program are you using? I read some books and found some exercises. As Naruto had suspected. It's a good start, but I can help you find one that works better for you, Kakashi I smiled. Now, shall we see about some D-ranks? Naruto scowled, debating if he could get away with replacing himself with a clone. He fucking hated D-ranks. Kakashi wouldn't even notice, too busy reading his Aika Aika. Sasuke would get annoyed, but he could find his own clone technique. No clones, Naruto. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the Jounin. Challenge accepted. Niji walked away from the market, supplies in hand. He did not know why Gai-sensei still insisted on completing D-ranks. They were carrying out regular C-ranks and training intently for the Chunin exams that were not that far away. He spouted something about youth and serving the village, but Niji was not convinced. He wondered if this was how Naruto felt. He understood now, D-ranks were indeed the worst. Speaking of the Uzumaki, Niji still had not seen him, even around the village. He was more bothered than he had expected he would be. He had given up on Naruto returning to training and had settled for the techniques he had learned up until this point. He did not dare venture into the library nor ask his Jounin sensei for more. It would most definitely make its way back to his clan if he did that. Naruto was temperamental and unpredictable, but he had known his secrets were safe with the blonde. Naruto hated the Hyuga clan more than he wished to screw over Niji. It had been strangely dependable. He was still of the opinion that Naruto was the wrong in this whole situation. The blonde was far too childish, and the fact he appeared to have utterly abandoned training with Niji was one such example of his short-sightedness. Niji had not done anything to earn this treatment, and he knew he was not the only one who benefited from the joint training. Naruto's bloodline limit was formidable, and the applications of it in taijutsu were very different than the Byakugan, which made for productive training sessions when pitted against each other. The Byakugan relied upon chakra, so it was excellent in battles involving any form of chakra use, such as ninjutsu or genjutsu. It was also unparalleled in detecting chakra signatures, as long as they were within the limits of the vision field. It meant that Niji would never lose track of his opponent, and therefore could not be caught by surprise. Naruto's bloodline limit, which he refused to tell Niji the name of, had nothing to do with chakra. It involved seeing the minute details of movements, a muscle twitch, a bead of sweat, even a pulse. It even allowed him a wider field of vision, to a lesser extent than the Byakugan, but it was enough to cover most of his blind spots. One of the aspects of Naruto's bloodline limit that always caught Niji off guard was how the blonde could see Niji's center of gravity and manipulate it at will through his fighting style. These facts meant that Niji had yet to beat the blonde in a taijutsu fight. It was like he could see every movement Niji made before he had even moved. He knew Naruto was reading the twitches of his muscles and his changing center of gravity, but it did not make it any less frustrating. Niji was used to having a bloodline limit that allowed him to observe things that others had no hope of imagining, but having that turned on him was less than ideal. The Hyuga clan had always prided themselves on being the best at taijutsu for good reason. The combination of the Byakugan and their clan techniques were formidable and in close combat, nigh impenetrable. Naruto's own bloodline limit allowed him to find cracks in the Hyuga clan style. He knew every move Niji was going to make and always moved to perfectly counter it. It was less effective on ninjutsu than the Byakugan, but once, when Naruto had been in one of his better moods, he had explained that he could see the hand seals being made through the contractions of the muscles in the hands. It was not infallible, it depended on Naruto recognizing the pattern of hand seals in the first place. Gai-sensei really had been the perfect teacher for him. Niji knew those 2 extra years he'd spent with Gai-sensei would have really made a difference. Naruto was already suited to taijutsu, but Gai-sensei was a master of the art. He did sort of understand the jealousy and hostility towards his team. Losing the perfect teacher would have been difficult, but Naruto was taking it a step too far. He looked up and caught a flash of blonde. He activated the Byakugan and saw the very familiar chakra signature walking through one of the side streets. His feet were moving before he even had time to think, and he ran through the side street, his gaze locked on that signature. He caught up quickly and reached out to grab his arm. Naruto ducked away from him and twirled, kunai in hand. His blue eyes scanned him over before he relaxed. Fuck, Niji, don't sneak up on me. Naruto tucked the kunai back into his pouch. Next time I might actually stab you. He was speaking as if it had not been weeks since they had last seen one another, as if he had not shirked his responsibilities and broken his word. You are a coward, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto scowled, blue eyes narrowed. The fuck you say? Niji straightened, all the thoughts that had been building up spilling out as soon as he could form the words. You are a coward, he continued firmly. You are childish and petty and unreliable. Where the fuck is this coming from? Did you or did you not agree to teach me ninjutsu? I mean, yeah. Have you not abandoned that? Hey, I don't owe you anything, Naruto spat, his expression darkening. I did you a fucking favor. I never said how long I would do it for. No, but the reasons for stopping are stupid, Niji glared back. You decided to throw a tantrum when you were removed from Gai-sensei's care and took it out on Lee. When things do not go your way, you throw a fit and avoid anything in connection with it. Do you not? Go fuck yourself, Naruto swore. You are doing it now, Niji pointed out. You need to get over yourself and realize that reacting in anger is only going to be detrimental in the long run. Naruto scoffed. I don't want to hear that from you, he snarled. Mister. I'm going to be angry at the world for things that I haven't even bothered to try to change. You walked around with a poor me attitude your entire fucking life and you think you can get off judging me? I did, Niji admitted, and you were the one to open my eyes. However, it is not any fault of mine that I remained with Guy and you did not. It is no fault of Tenten's or Lee's. Being angry with us accomplishes nothing, it is a petty, unfounded grudge. So what? What? So what if it's petty? Naruto narrowed his eyes. I don't owe you anything. It ain't my fault that you thought something more was going on here. I taught you some ninjutsu to piss off your clan. I couldn't give a shit about you as a person. So stop whatever shit you've got rolling around in that big head of yours that makes you think you can order me around. Niji met Naruto's eyes, a long silence passing between them. We're done, Naruto finally spat. He turned and walked away, calling out over his shoulder. Stay the fuck away from me. Niji sighed as Naruto vanished from view. That had not gone how he thought it would. He had underestimated Naruto's anger and pettiness. It was utterly pathetic. He had the capacity to be one of the strongest taijutsu masters of the village, but he hindered his own progress through his stunted view of the world. Niji did not owe the blonde anything and he certainly didn't need him. It was none of his business if Naruto insisted on burning every bridge he'd ever made. All Niji had to do was keeping working towards his own goals. He was better off without him. Tenten threw her kunai up in the air, catching it and throwing it up again in a steady cycle. She didn't mind helping out in her family's shop, but when it was dead quiet like this, she wished she could be training instead. It felt like she was wasting time. She had so much that she wanted to do and she could do none of it here. Lee's taijutsu was becoming really strong and Niji was still the best of them by far. She didn't want to fall behind. She knew she was a lot stronger than she had been when she'd first joined Gai-sensei's team, but she wasn't satisfied. Gai-sensei always encouraged them to push their limits and she was trying to do that every single day. Her weapon repertoire had grown significantly and she felt so much more confident with both her close weapon combat and her aim. She felt she was taking real, tangible steps towards her dream of being the strongest weapons mistress in Konoha. The first fight with Naruto had stuck with her. It had been the wake-up call she'd needed. She knew that he didn't really acknowledge her existence, but that was fine. It didn't affect the impact he had made on her. He may be unapproachable and angry with their team right now, but that didn't change his strength or his dedication. He may not reciprocate, but Tenten was glad they had met. It had given her a shove in the right direction. The bell rang and she grabbed the kunai out of the air, plastering on her customer service smile. "Good afternoon, how may we help you?" Naruto stared back at her, an unreadable expression on his face. She hadn't seen him since he blew up at Lee at the mission assignment desk. "I just can't get away from you fuckers," he muttered beneath his breath. Tenten felt the urge to ask but squashed it down. "How are you, Naruto?" she smiled. "It's been a while." Naruto shot her a weird look. Tenten wasn't sure where to go from here. The last time she'd seen him was when they were being assigned the festival missions. She never did find out what he had against the Rinne festival. She also wanted to know more about why he was so angry at them, but she wasn't in a place where she could ask. They didn't know each other very well, and despite her desire to change that, it wasn't up to her. She had to respect the fact that Naruto wanted nothing to do with them. She knew her team had mixed feelings about Naruto, but she couldn't hold anything against him. It did bother her that he was so angry. Not in that she thought it was bad or anything, but in that she couldn't help but feel there was more to it. Naruto gave her the impression of a stray dog, furious and snapping at every hand offered, not because it was truly bad or angry, but it had too many negative experiences to trust again. She knew he'd been treated badly by the villagers before. She'd overheard more than one person saying horrible things about him. The thing she couldn't figure out is why. Naruto was rude and uncooperative, but he was also super strong and a really hard worker. She still wanted to be someone in his corner. She had seen how fond Guy-sensei was of him, and although they had gotten off to a rocky start, Tenten could look back and see she handled the training situation wrong. She should have trusted Naruto to know his own limits. More importantly, she needed to push herself and have more confidence. She had never once seen Naruto or Guy-sensei doubt themselves, and it was something she wanted for herself. "I'm sorry." Naruto looked up from where he was going through packs of shuriken. For back then, she smiled awkwardly. "I should have trusted you, and I need to trust myself more too." It was a good training idea. Naruto looked back at her, but she couldn't read the look in his eyes. "Whatever," he shrugged and went back to ignoring her. Tenten sat behind the counter, trying not to stare at the other genin. She didn't want to make him uncomfortable. A few minutes passed and she looked up at the sound of metal clanging against wood. Naruto had dropped a couple packs of shuriken and kunai onto the counter, and she bounced up, ringing up the amount quickly. "Thank you," she bowed her head. "Please come again." She raised her head to see him already walking out the shop. She sighed, resting her chin on her fist. She wasn't sure if he believed her apology, but she felt better having offered it. She would just have to keep trying to show him that she was in his corner. Guy-sensei had always taught them never to give up after all. Naruto dragged his feet toward the meeting location. Kakashi had managed to detect his clones for every D rank so far, and it was fucking annoying. He couldn't figure out what was giving it away. The clones were identical and they acted just like him. Even the chakra signatures should have been the same. So how was Kakashi managing to figure it out every damn time? He knew Kakashi was a damn good shinobi, and while that was a good attribute for a teacher, it was really backfiring on him right now. So Naruto had been forced to actually participate in every D rank, and he was ready to burn the village to the ground. He used to do C ranks. This was such a step down from what he'd been doing before, and he hated it. He was capable of so much more than stupid D ranks, and yet, he had to accommodate for his teammates and Naruto. You can't rush ahead without them. Kakashi could shove that up his ass. Every day he considered not showing up to the team meetups, but every day he did. Why wasn't that enough for him? His encounter with Niji a few days ago had already put him in a foul mood, and Tenten just confused him. He didn't know what her gain was, but people didn't just apologize. Only Guy-sensei did that. He didn't trust it. Sakura had also been baffling, turning up every day and working quietly on her own. people didn't just change like that. She was up to something and Naruto wasn't about to let his guard down just so she could show her true colors later. She wouldn't just stop being a fangirl overnight, and he did still catch her blushing at Sasuke occasionally. He hated this. He hated people. He just wanted to be left alone. He had better things to do than waste his thoughts on these people. He spotted Sasuke and immediately walked to join the other boy. At least Sasuke didn't annoy him. He was pretty sure if he was about to fall off a cliff and Sasuke walked past, he would ignore him, and it was all Naruto ever wanted. Sasuke knew he could handle himself, and Naruto reciprocated the thought. Sasuke wouldn't apologize or accost him in an alleyway or change overnight. Sakura hadn't arrived yet and Naruto frowned. Despite the fact that they all knew Kakashi would be at least 3 hours late, Sakura insisted on turning up on time every day. He and Sasuke were up and about long before the meetup time, but they were usually off doing their own thing. A thought occurred to him. He spent more time around this team than Kakashi did. That was horrifying. It was good ammunition for next time Kakashi got on his case about shit. It was true though that he probably wouldn't be if Sasuke wasn't on the team. Kakashi didn't have to know that though. "Are we early?" he asked. "I hate being early." "You're 10 minutes late," Sasuke shrugged. "Sakura hasn't turned up." Hope blossomed in Naruto's chest. Was this it? Had she finally given up and dropped out? It seemed too good to be true. He was distracted by the sight of a Genin team walking towards them. "Are you Team 7? The Jounin sensei asked, her red eyes looking over them. She was pretty tall, with curly brown hair past her shoulders. She was wrapped in wide, white bandages, arranged to form a dress with a red shirt beneath, the wide billowing sleeves reaching her wrist. Her hitayate kept her hair out of her face, and her pale face was soft and unmarred by lines or scars. She couldn't have been older than Kakashi. The genin around her must have been around his age. The rough-looking kid whose fur-lined jacket had made it look like he was sporting a mane had symmetrical red triangles on each cheek, signifying his status as part of the Inuzuka clan. The small white puppy sitting on top of his head was also a dead giveaway. The other boy, taller than his counterpart, had his face mostly covered by the neckline of his oversized gray jacket, and his eyes were hidden by dark glasses. The final member, a small girl, was definitely a member of the Hyuga clan. Her pale lavender eyes were like a beacon to her clan's status, but she seemed to lack the confidence that the Hyuga clan wore like a second skin. She wore a soft, pink hoodie and her short navy hair framed her face. She didn't look up from the ground as they stopped in front of Naruto and Sasuke. "Who's asking?" Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. "You can't talk to Kurenai-sensei like that." The Inuzuka yelled, pointing an accusing finger. Kurenai. Naruto pondered. He hadn't heard that name before. He was pulled from his thoughts by Sasuke cuffing the back of his head. His "hey" was ignored as Sasuke rolled his eyes. "You don't have to be a dick to everyone, Dobe." Naruto pouted. Rich coming from this team, he remembered listening to Sasuke's complaints about his former classmates on many, many occasions. He had been a right dick and Naruto had fully supported him, then he turns on him like this? "I take it Kakashi isn't here yet?" Kurenai shook her head. "Typical. Where's your other teammate?" "Don't know." "Any idea at all?" "Nope." "How do you not know?" The Inuzuka piped up again and Naruto gritted his teeth. "She's your teammate." "Not my problem," he shrugged. It wasn't his job to keep track of her. "We can ask Kakashi when he eventually turns up," Kurenai cuts in, warding off the brewing argument before it could begin. "For now, you can come with us. This farming D rank is joint between our teams, so we can just get started." Naruto couldn't detect any signs of deception, and he knew some of the bigger D ranks were shared between teams, but he didn't like this unknown adult was ordering him around. How did he know that this was actually a joint mission? What if she was taking advantage of Kakashi's tardiness to rope them into some shit? "You are so bloody paranoid," Sasuke shook his head. It's written all over face, Dobe. I do not know what you are talking about. Look, the sooner we do this D-rank, the sooner we can actually do something useful, Sasuke pointed out. So just shelve the paranoia for now and get this D-rank done so we can leave. And if this goes sideways? It's a fucking D-rank, Dobe. What's your point? You are impossible. What the fuck? That last remark didn't come from either of them. They looked over to the other Genin team to see them staring. Naruto scowled back at them. What the fuck were they looking at? That's the most Sasuke's ever said, like ever, the Inuzuka said, eyes still wide. Can't get him to shut up, Naruto nodded, smirking at Sasuke's venomous look thrown his way. Shut the fuck up, Dobe. Have you all met then? Kurenai broke in again, working overtime to keep the peace. We know Sasuke but not the blonde kid, the Inuzuka said, and was he the only person on the damn team to speak? What the hell was up with the other two? Well, we can introduce ourselves then. I am Kurenai, Jounin sensei of Team 8. I'm Inuzuka Kiba, the boy said, pointing at himself with his thumb a little too proudly. Aburame Shino, the taller boy added, speaking for the first time. The Bug Clan, he did resemble the other members he'd seen about the village. The girl didn't speak and Kurenai gave her a little nudge. Hyuga Hinata, she whispered, Naruto barely catching it. She looked like a Hyuga but she certainly didn't act like one. Naruto, he offered reluctantly. He hated introductions, they were always so full of false niceness and shit. Uchiha Sasuke, Sasuke said flatly, ending this nightmare. Okay, we better go see about this mission then, Kurenai said, smiling gently. I hope we can work well together. Kakashi may be an asshole most of the time but Naruto couldn't help be glad he'd been assigned to him and not this lady. The whole kind of vibe was sending a shiver down his spine. This is why he preferred assholes. They didn't try to hide their intentions or true thoughts and they were usually upfront with stuff. Nice people, he could never tell what they were really thinking. The sooner this mission was over with the better. Sakura jogged her way to her team's meeting point, shoving the pastry she'd picked up on the way out that morning into her mouth. It was weird to think that only a couple of weeks before she'd have fainted at the thought. She hadn't allowed herself something so high-carb in a long time but after yesterday, she knew she had to make some changes. She'd been forcing herself to eat more since she started training for real. It hadn't been enough since she'd been forced to miss the farming D-rank yesterday due to illness. Her family doctor had said she'd exhausted herself and need to either increase her calorie intake or cut down on the training. Losing time on training wasn't an option so Sakura had agreed to snack throughout the day on top of her meals. It wasn't easy, every bite she took felt like it was converting itself to fat and she hadn't been able to stop checking her body in the mirror every day to make sure she wasn't becoming flabby. She knew it was a habit she had to break. She had to stop thinking of her body in terms of how skinny it could be and instead about how strong it was. If she had to put on weight to get stronger, that was what she would have to do. She knew that it would take a long time to train herself out of thinking like that. It was hard to break habits built over years. Being a kunoichi was a lot harder than she'd ever imagined. She'd thought she'd been ready when she graduated from the academy, but her team had given her a hell of a wake-up call. Sasuke-kun thought she was weak and Naruto didn't even think she was worth the time of day. She could tell that even Kakashi-sensei thought she was the weakest in the team. She didn't like it. She'd graduated at the top of her class in the academy and she'd held that position with pride. She'd left that team meeting at first not knowing what she was going to do, overwhelmed by the negative thoughts crowding her mind. She slowly realized over the course of that day that she needed to show them that they were wrong about her, but it wasn't until she'd started training to show them all just how wrong they were about her that she realized that they were right. She was the weakest in the team. She struggled with exercises that Naruto and Sasuke could do without breaking a sweat. It was embarrassing. She'd been too ashamed to even greet Sasuke-kun in the mornings and she avoided speaking to either of them. She just couldn't face them, knowing they were right. She hadn't a clue what being a kunoichi meant, and she'd taken the career so lightly. She had vowed to change things and become a team member that Sasuke-kun could respect. So he would look at her and see an equal he could fall in love with. It had taken him talking about her like that, but Sakura had finally realized that her looks didn't matter to Sasuke. He only cared about her strength and skill. It was mortifying to know that she had been focused on all the wrong things, but it wasn't too late. She may not have perfect hair or skin or clothes, but if she could show that she was strong, that she was working hard and could contribute to the team, then that would be enough for Sasuke to look at her and see someone who could support him. She didn't like Naruto, but she did want him to acknowledge her too. It was really, really hard. She was exhausted and her legs hurt, and she had cuts all over her hands, and she felt like she would never be clean again. She often wondered what she could have been able to do if she had started earlier, but that didn't help her now. She was learning that while getting fitter was a physical matter, it was more of a mental battle. She felt like stopping so many times and catching her breath, but she pushed herself to go that bit further, and she always managed to do it. She could do this. Kakashi-sensei had given her a real training menu to follow, and she diligently completed it every day, adding extra runs where she could. She was going to start looking into ways to improve her taijutsu next. It was what she saw Sasuke-kun practicing the most, so she figured that should be her next focus. The academy had put them through katas and spars a lot in their final years, but wasn't anything like what she saw Naruto and Sasuke-kun doing. They were way faster and hit way harder, and she didn't know how to achieve that. She should pay another visit to the library. Forehead. She stopped, looking over to the familiar voice. She hadn't realized she was passing Ino's family's flower shop, too lost in her thoughts. The other girl was standing out front, a basket of flowers in her hands. She was still as beautiful as when she'd last seen her: long, silky blonde hair, clear skin, large pale blue eyes, a figure Sakura would kill for. She'd always been jealous of the way Ino looked. It was so unfair that she was just born like that. "Ino pig," she called back automatically. "What happened?" Ino walked toward her and Sakura could see real concern in her eyes. "You're a mess." "I'd been training," Sakura shrugged, biting and swallowing the last piece of pastry. "You're on a team with Sasuke-kun." Ino scowled. "You're not going to win his heart looking like that. Do you have any idea how many calories that pastry has? Have you given up?" She smirked. "Are you finally admitting defeat to me?" Sakura looked at her for a long moment. In the academy, Ino had been her ultimate rival. She couldn't count the number of arguments and contests they'd had in an effort to prove themselves the better partner for Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun hadn't once acknowledged them, and Sakura had attributed it to the aloof, mysterious aura that made Sasuke-kun so cool. Now she had spent a couple of weeks with him, seeing how he interacted with Naruto. It was so pathetically easy to see he truly hadn't cared. All those challenges, losing Ino as her best friend, it hadn't mattered. "I just realized that I need to grow up," she replied, ignoring the bait. "I'm a kunoichi now. Having perfect hair and makeup won't be any use on a mission if I can't back it up with real skills." Ino shot her a strange look. "What happened to you?" she demanded. "This isn't you. Sasuke-kun isn't so shallow that those things matter to him." Sakura met her gaze confidently. "He cares about strength, so I'm going to become strong. Not just for Sasuke-kun's sake, but mine too." She never wanted to feel like she had the day after the bell test ever again. She wasn't okay with being the weakest, but she could live with it as long as she knew she was working to change it. There were a lot of things outside of her control, but this wasn't one of them. "We're not academy students anymore, Ino," she said, shaking her head. "We're kunoichi. We need to start taking that seriously. I haven't given up on Sasuke-kun, but I now know there's a lot of other stuff I need to focus on. Sasuke-kun isn't going anywhere, and if I want him to look at me, I need to prove I'm strong enough to stand by his side." She looked up, cursing at the time. Sorry, Ino, I have to go. She didn't wait for the blonde girl's reply as she resumed her jog. She had to hurry, she couldn't arrive later than Kakashi-sensei. Naruto tapped his foot as Kakashi explained the training exercise. The Jounin had been 4 hours late this time, and while it had given Naruto extra time to work on his kenjutsu, it also delayed his plans for the rest of the day. He carried out most of his training outside of Team 7 hours, and this was taking a good chunk of time out of it. I am not doing that. All eyes turned to him. Naruto, this is not optional. This is ridiculous. He threw up his hands. I'm not doing it. It is just a training exercise. Kakashi tried to appease him, but Naruto would not be swayed. For newly graduated genin, he pointed out. I did this on my own like 3 years ago. This exercise isn't meant to be done alone. Naruto crossed his arms, glaring at Kakashi. He was not about to waste his morning doing a damn obstacle course. He was not opposed to the concept, but this particular course was a permanent fixture in Training Ground 2, and it was purpose-built for newly graduated genin to get used to traveling through terrain. They had the occasional survival trip in the academy, but that was more to learn the essential of camping than anything else. They wouldn't know the tree walking technique at this point, so it was an appropriate level of difficulty for them. Naruto had C-rank guard patrols that were more difficult than that course. It would be way too easy for Sasuke too. You've never done it tied to other genin. Yeah, because I don't need to be. Naruto shook his head. That course is meant to simulate traveling on missions. I don't know why the fuck I would be tied to my teammates on a mission. It's a team training exercise, Kakashi emphasized. Something you need a significant amount of work on. It's a waste of time. I know I can do it, Sasuke can do it. It would only be Sakura, and I ain't spending 2 hours getting dragged down by someone who can't pull herself up a wall. And if you were attached to Sakura by a rope and she fell, what would you do? Cut the rope, Naruto said as if it was obvious because it was. And Sasuke? Cut the rope. Naruto, you are on a team. You cannot just abandon your teammates whenever you feel like it. They should be able to look after themselves. If I cut the rope, I believe they will be able to save themselves. How is that being a bad teammate? And what if they didn't? What if they died? Naruto felt something twist in gut at the thought of losing Sasuke, but he squashed it. It didn't matter. It wasn't going to happen because Sasuke could handle his shit. He could see that there was something more to this for Kakashi, but Naruto wasn't going to compromise his training for whatever emotional baggage Kakashi was lugging around. It wouldn't be my fault that they can't look after themselves. Kakashi's eye twitched and Naruto could see his gray eye darkened in anger. He was really pissed off, but guess what, so was Naruto. This shit had been coming since they were placed on the same team. Their ideals were too different. What if it was you? They cut the rope on you? Good. I would figure it out. I ain't special. I don't expect to be treated any different. Kakashi sighed heavily. What do you want me to do? Carry her through the whole course? No, go at the slowest person's pace and assist each other. Like. Goddamn. Team. I don't see how that is any different than carrying her through the fucker. Naruto. Kakashi yelled and Naruto could tell he was reaching his limit. He was quite impressed with himself. Kakashi was hard to ruffle on a good day, and he'd been dealing with Naruto for years. He couldn't get this kind of reaction out of him often, but he found he couldn't even enjoy it. When are you going to get it through your thick skull that you are a part of this team? Something in Naruto snapped. You think I don't know that? He spat. I know I'm stuck on this goddamn team. I turn up for training, I go on the stupid D ranks, I meet every single fucking obligation that is attached to this fucking team, but is that good enough for you? No. It's all, Naruto, be nice to your teammates, or Naruto, slow down, or Naruto, hold yourself back for their sake. I didn't ask for this. I wanted to stay with Gai-sensei. Sasuke and Sakura had vanished from his view and all he could see was Kakashi as he released all the rage that had been building up for the past couple of weeks. I am being forced on missions that are well below my skill level and training that doesn't even challenge me. The fucking Hokage decided that I should be put on this team because I can't be nice to civilians who hate my fucking guts and would kill me given half a chance. People from my class are fucking chunin. I'm not even allowed to sit the exam. And yet, I suck it up. I turn up every goddamn day and suffer through whatever half-assed training you offer because you can't be bothered to turn up. He felt like he'd stalled, like he was stuck while the world moved around him. He had been a genin for so long and it was stifling. He was sick of seeing the people around him move forward when he was forced to stay still through no choice of his own. What was even worse is that not only could he not move forward, he had been being forced backwards ever since joining this team. Why do I always have to be one to bend? It's not my fault I graduated early. I am doing my absolute fucking best to put up with shit and do productive training in my own time, but you go on and on about teamwork and depending on each other and making each other better, but that doesn't fucking apply here because I can't depend on anyone. Sakura is too weak and you're too busy trying to make us work together than to actually look and see what the fuck is going wrong. He used to be able to do what he wanted. He hadn't trained with Gai-sensei every day, but he could do C ranks that challenged him and training that he actually liked and generally exist in peace. At least on C ranks he could occasionally leave the village. He didn't just lose Gai-sensei but all of that too. Nobody seemed to get that. They just assumed he was being rude and difficult because he was an asshole and not because he hated absolutely everything about his situation. That was the truth of it. He hated his life right now. He hated that he couldn't take the Chunin exams. He hated that he lost Gai-sensei. He hated that no matter how much he avoided them the villagers still blamed him for shit that wasn't his fault. He hated that he'd lost his freedom. He hated that his choices had been taken away from him. He hated that no one would even acknowledge that fact he was fucking trying. If he really wanted to, he could miss every team meeting and mission and do his own thing. He would be punished by the Hokage, but that wasn't anything new. Fuck, he could leave the village. He wouldn't get far without the ANBU catching him. He knew that from when he tried when he was younger, but he could figure it out. He was a lot stronger than he had been when he was 4. He'd only decided to try and leave the village the legal ways when all of his attempts failed. I don't even know why I try, he threw up his hands. This is Naruto just being difficult, right? I'm the asshole who refuses to work in a team because I'm evil and horrible and difficult. Everything is my fault, right? Just ask the fucking villagers. I can't do anything right. He stopped, his chest heaving and his mouth dry as the silence weighed on the surroundings. He hadn't meant to say that much. Fuck, he didn't want to deal with this. Fuck this, fuck everything. I'm outta here. He turned and ran from the training ground. No one called him back. Kakashi slumped further into the branch, the quiet rustling of leaves washing over him. He was pathetic. He was a terrible teacher and Minato-sensei would be so disappointed in him. How had he managed to get everything so wrong? He knew Naruto had his issues with teamwork and it had been something that Kakashi wanted to try and address. When he looked at Naruto, he saw himself before Obito died. He'd also been against having a team and he'd cared more about his own training and missions than he did Obito and Rin. He just didn't want Naruto to have to learn the lessons the hard way, like he did. There wasn't a day that went by when Kakashi didn't regret his actions and the attitude that led to the loss of his team. He didn't want it to break Naruto like it broke him. He hadn't really tried when Naruto was just his ninjutsu student. He hadn't wanted to overstep and Guy was doing a great job with him. He'd seen the changes in Naruto over his time as Guy's student and while it wasn't all the way there, it had been leaps and bounds from the first day. When he'd been reassigned to Kakashi, he knew it was a chance to try and show the kid that having a team was a good thing, that they could support each other, help each other improve, that he could have allies to fall back on. It was a stroke of luck that he and Sasuke not only already knew each other but actually seemed to get along. He still didn't know how that had happened. He knew Sakura was one of the problems here. She was so far behind the boys and her attitude at first had been problematic. While he did not agree with the way it was done, he could already see the changes in Sakura. She was putting a lot more effort in and seemed less focused on Sasuke. She still wasn't ready for a C rank, but she was at least now heading in the right direction. Part of it wasn't her fault. She was from a civilian family. The only exposure she'd had to being a kunoichi was through the academy, and that was a tame, sanitized version to what the reality was. But was it really fair to hold the other two back for her sake? Naruto's words had been bothering him since their argument this morning, and he knew deep down that the kid was right. Kakashi hadn't acknowledged how hard everything had been for him and hadn't appreciated that Naruto really was trying in his own way. He hadn't missed a mission or training session even if his attitude toward Sakura still fell short. It wasn't what Kakashi had wanted from him, but that didn't change the fact that Naruto was making the effort. He'd seen the way the kid responded to other jounin he didn't like, and Naruto didn't act that way with him. It was certainly not to the levels of admiration and respect he held for Guy, but Naruto did respect Kakashi, in his own way. He'd probably screwed all that up now, hadn't he? Naruto was right. It was unfair of Kakashi to ask him to slow down for his teammates. It was for the good of the team but to the detriment of Naruto. That wasn't fair. Naruto's wasn't willing to slow down and support his teammates, which had been Kakashi's main issue with him, but also hadn't seen things from Naruto's point of view. He couldn't rely on his teammates either since they were not strong enough yet, and why would Naruto allow them to rely on him if he couldn't do the same? Sasuke was advanced for a genin fresh out of the academy, even if he wasn't quite on the same level as Naruto yet, but he was still getting used to being a genin. And yet he couldn't throw Sakura and Sasuke into the deep end. That was a surefire way of getting them killed. He dropped his head back onto the tree trunk. How was he going to do this? He had to change the way he was doing things and try to be better, but how was he going to do that? All his genin were at different levels and they all needed different things, and working as a real team would be impossible until they were all at more similar levels. Did he abandon team training to focus on them individually? Would that be better for them as a team in the long run? How would that help them be a team though? It would put them on a level footing so they could work better on missions and team exercises, but would it make a difference to Naruto's viewpoint? He knew Naruto would still cut the rope even if they stronger, so that didn't help the whole try and get Naruto to see that teams are a good thing plan. And even if he trained them at levels appropriate for them, they would never get to similar levels as Naruto would keep improving. Sakura would never catch up. He was at a loss. He didn't know what he was going to do. All he did know was that things had to change. He couldn't drive Naruto away any further, and as it was, he didn't know if he would be able to repair the damage already done. Why did he think he would be a good jounin sensei for them? He was a complete failure. He had failed his own genin team and now he was failing his students. He knew he hadn't put as much effort into being a jounin sensei as he could have. He felt like if he actually tried, he would just screw things up even further. He wanted to be a good teacher like Minato sensei, but he felt stuck. He hated not knowing what to do and he didn't want to make the wrong choices. It was a bit late for that though. Apparently he'd already been making all the wrong choices. He needed to figure something out. He may be a failure, but these kids were his responsibility. It was time to stop running from that. He may make the wrong decisions, but he was doing that now. The worst had already happened. His fears were already becoming reality. How could he make things worse than what they already were? Things couldn't stay the way they were, and Kakashi vowed then and there to change. He didn't know how yet, but his team deserved better. Naruto deserved better. Naruto slammed the window shut, cursing the old bag beneath his breath. She'd made another ploy to kick him out and he was so fucking fed up with it. He paid his rent, he didn't make any noise, he kept his trash tidy, and he even cleaned the place. What more did she want from him? He had seen places kept in worse conditions during his D ranks, and yet they didn't have their landlady trying to kick them out at any given opportunity. She'd said he was bad for business and he had noticed that the apartments on his floor never stayed full for long, but he knew that had more to do with the building's tendency to lack hot water and electricity for days on end. He didn't even use his front door, so no one would even see him in the corridor. He knew the QB had killed her only son in the attack, but that didn't have anything to do with him. He took a breath of the crisp morning air, taking a moment to appreciate the quiet. He could almost imagine the village was completely empty. He didn't let himself linger for long, making his way across the rooftops. He would not be attending the training for Team 7 today, so he had to find somewhere Kakashi and Sasuke wouldn't think to look for him. Unfortunately, the pair of them knew him a little too well for his liking, although it was still nowhere near to the extent of Gai-sensei. He hopped down to the ground in one of the side alleys, heading out to the Hokage Mountain. He had never been there with either of them, so it should be safe. He shoved his hands into his pockets, glaring at the ground as he walked through the empty streets. He wasn't sure what to do here. He'd said his piece and he'd meant every word, but that didn't actually change the situation. The Chunin exams were only a few months away, but he had no guarantee that Kakashi would offer up the other two to sit it with him, saying dumb shit like they weren't ready or something. He didn't think he could wait another year. He couldn't spend another year pissing his hard work up the wall just because the people around him were useless. Maybe it was time to consider leaving. He was much stronger than he was during his last attempt, and if he picked the right time and disguise, he could probably do it. He could leave one of his clones here to buy him some time too. He didn't know what he would do when he actually left, but he was sure he would figure it out. He could just go after bounties or something. He walked up to the cliff face and looked up in the cold, stone faces of previous Hokage. He didn't feel a connection to them, not like everyone else seemed to. The only things he would be leaving behind really was Sasuke, Kakashi, Heiei, Gai-sensei, and Ichiraka Ramen. Sasuke, Kakashi, and Heiei would be totally fine without him, and Gai-sensei had his new team to worry about. He would miss Ichiraka Ramen, but there was bound to be other ramen out there. He could spend some of his free time finding one just as good. Naruto-kun. Naruto jumped out of his skin and snapped around to stare at a grinning Gai-sensei. He hadn't changed from the last time he'd seen him, a perfectly symmetrical bowl cut, shining white teeth, and skin-tight green spandex. He quickly looked around but couldn't see any of his genin team. "Hi, Gai-sensei. Are you here to train, Naruto-kun?" Gai-sensei grinned brightly. "You were always a most diligent student." "Yeah," Naruto agreed, not mentioning that he was here mainly to avoid people. Training was just a side benefit. "You too?" "I am challenging myself to climb this mountain with one hand." Gai-sensei laughed. "Kakashi and I had a challenge to do so and I lost to my rival, so I must train to address my shortcomings." Naruto personally couldn't imagine Kakashi having the motivation to do that much physical labor. His happiness at seeing Gai-sensei dimmed at the thought of his new Jounin-sensei. "Is everything alright, Naruto-kun?" His head snapped up to stare at Gai-sensei. Was he that obvious? Gai-sensei had always been a little too good at reading him. "Yeah, Gai-sensei," he brushed it off. "Are we going to climb this or what?" Gai-sensei immediately lit up and Naruto blinked at his blinding smile. "You are flourishing in your springtime of youth, Naruto-kun. How wonderful that you would join my training." Naruto couldn't hide his small smile at the man's antics. It was a breath of fresh air after the last couple of weeks. He needed this. He needed the uncomplicated approach that Gai-sensei had. A spoon was a spoon with Gai-sensei, and he would never hold back with his students. He would only encourage them to try harder. "Race you to the top," he offered. Gai-sensei laughed. "Of course, Naruto-kun." Naruto faced the wall and readied himself, thoughts of Team 7 shoved to the back of his mind. He would need his full concentration for this, and for the first time since he'd left Gai-sensei's tutelage, he felt like he was actually doing something. He would think back on his plans to leave later, but for now, he would soak in the challenge and thrill that came with being Gai-sensei's student, if only for a short time. Sasuke flung the blanket off him and stomped to the front door, vowing to murder the asshole who dared knock incessantly at his door at this goddamn time of the morning. He'd had never had visitors and didn't want to start now. He'd already had a shit week. D ranks were every bit as awful as Naruto had always said they were, and after the blonde's blow up at Kakashi, he'd been nowhere to be found, so Sasuke had been forced to suffer the team on his own. He had not liked it. He would never admit it aloud, but training was better with Naruto there. If Sasuke was going to choose anyone in this village to get stuck with, it was Naruto, so the fact the blonde had ghosted them all had put Sasuke in a foul mood. He swung the door open with growl, only to see the bane of his life standing there. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Dramatic much? Sasuke slammed the door in his stupid face. The knocking started back up again and Sasuke stood in the darkness of his apartment, debating the merits of murdering his teammate. The moron ignored him all week and then turned up at his apartment in the middle of the damn night and called him dramatic? Come on, Sasuke. Let me in. Sasuke turned and dragged the door back open against his better judgment. Naruto barged in before he had the chance to speak, apparently unwilling to risk Sasuke slamming the door on him again. What the fuck, dope? It was then he noticed the packed duffel bag that Naruto had dumped on the ground. He met Naruto's eyes and hoped the blonde could read the murder in his eyes. Just hear me out. Naruto threw up his hands. Let me crash here for a couple days. And why the fuck would I do that? How much do you want the Katan Jutsu I promised? The super high-level forbidden ones that I may or may not have tracked down after Kakashi told me no that one time? Sasuke glared at him. He hated that Naruto knew him a little too well. The idiot wouldn't even use the jutsu himself, so why would he go looking for them? I want all of them. Naruto grinned back at him and Sasuke just continued glaring. Where the hell have you been? Naruto dumped his bag on the couch and proceeded to melt into Sasuke's couch. He was immune to Sasuke's glares, so he kicked the dope for good measure. Come on, Sasuke, it's the middle of the night. Naruto groaned, flopping his head back. Can't we do this in the morning? Sasuke was this close to throwing him out the window. You're the one who turned up at my apartment in the middle of the fucking night, dope, so you will answer or you will be sleeping in the forest of death. It wasn't like Sasuke would be getting back to sleep anytime soon. One blue eye opened and glared back at him. With a huff, Naruto straightened up and propped his chin on his hand while Sasuke crossed his arms, glaring expectantly. My landlady kicked me out, he said, rolling his eyes. Why? Because I'm me, Naruto spat bitterly. What other reason does she need? Sasuke frowned. He'd never understood what the villagers had against Naruto. He was an asshole and Sasuke frequently wished to smash his face into a tree, but he wasn't a bad person. As much as he annoyed Sasuke, he was also the only one Sasuke could trust to be straight with him and see him not for his Uchiha status, but as Sasuke. Naruto was an asshole, but Sasuke liked that about him, not that he'd ever tell the dumbass. He always met Sasuke blow for blow and never took it easy on him. He'd never seen anything that justified Naruto's treatment by the village. Naruto also went out of his way to avoid any and all villagers, so he wasn't sure what they had against him. That's shit, he replied, not sure what else there was to say. Naruto huffed a laugh, staring at the ceiling. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Alarm bells started ringing in Sasuke's head and he leaned forward abruptly. What? Naruto looked at him and laughed. I'm not going to off myself, he chuckled, although the sound was hollow. That would mean Konoha wins and I would burn down the village before I let them win. Sasuke leaned back slowly. He was more than familiar with Naruto's sentiments about Konoha, but he'd never heard the blonde sound so serious about it before. Would you hold it against me if I left? Sasuke blinked. Where the hell did that come from? I'm leaving, Naruto announced, as if he was talking about the forecast. Not tonight, but soon. Sasuke wished he could be more surprised by the sentiment, but it made a lot of sense. Naruto wasn't happy here and his response to conflict with people was to run. The fight with Kakashi might have pushed him too far. Okay. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Nothing to say? What is there to say? Sasuke shrugged, dumping himself into one of his armchairs. You're the most stubborn mule I know, so if you've decided to go, you'll go. You get why, right? Sasuke shrugged again. Would you ever leave? Why would I do that? You're not going to beat Itachi by staying in the village. Sasuke snapped towards his teammate, a snarl in his throat. What the fuck did he know about Itachi? Itachi had been ANBU, he'd gotten strong in the village, so why wouldn't Sasuke? Naruto put his hands up in a placating gesture. I'm not saying you can't kill him, I'm just asking if you're sure you're going to get strong enough here, with Team 7, he continued, dropping his hands. Itachi was ANBU sure, but the village is holding you back to the same level as your peers, not your actual abilities. They did it with me too. You weren't allowed to graduate early, right? Sasuke was about to snap something back but he stopped, considering. Kakashi-sensei had been better with training since the fight with Naruto, but it was still nowhere near what Sasuke wanted. He trained until he bled when he came home at night, and if it wasn't for Naruto bribing him with powerful jutsu in the academy, he would be severely lacking in those too. Kakashi-sensei has been better about training recently. How would leaving the village benefit me? Naruto grinned, light entering his eyes for the first time since he'd barged his way into Sasuke's apartment. It's a big world out there, Sasuke. I've seen it on C ranks. We could do whatever we wanted out there and no one would be able to hold us back. We'd have to disguise ourselves for a while, but we could collect bounties or something. Sasuke didn't know. Naruto had made some good points, but he didn't know if leaving the village would make him any stronger. Here he had teachers and access to jutsu, but outside the village, he would have nothing. Look, I just wanted to mention it. Naruto looked away. You're way better than this village, Sasuke. You don't owe them anything. That was the closest Naruto had ever come to a real compliment, although considering how he felt about Konoha, it wasn't exactly a high bar. I'm not going anywhere, for now, he answered. When are you planning on leaving? Our first C rank, Naruto replied immediately. He must have been thinking about this for a while. We always leave the village for that one, and there has got to be some chance to ditch Kakashi. What about Guy? He has his own team to worry about now. Naruto scowled and Sasuke rolled his eyes at the jealous ass. You're not going to tell anyone? That's a stupid question. A brief pause. Thanks, Sasuke. Go the fuck to sleep, dope. You're coming to team training tomorrow. But Sasuke abandoned him, walking back into his bedroom and slamming the door. The dobe had so many issues he could probably put a Yamanaka into a damn coma. He was paranoid, antagonistic, chaotic, smug, and responded with any emotional confrontation with instant, irrational anger, and then proceeded to avoid the person like the plague. He was one dysfunctional bastard, and he was the only person in the village that Sasuke genuinely liked. If the sandal was on the other foot, Sasuke realized that he would go to Naruto too. He wasn't sure how to feel about that. Naruto was a good person to have in his corner anyway. He was strong, clever, and fought dirty. He'd never seen anything come between Naruto and his goals before. He pushed Sasuke to be better and go further. He didn't know how things would change when the dobe left, but as the sunrise began to touch his window, he decided that it was a problem for the future. He could probably still get a couple of hours if he fell asleep now. Kakashi looked down from the trees, something loosening in his chest at the sight of 3 genin waiting for him. He hadn't tracked Naruto down during the week he was missing, having known the blonde long enough to know that that would only push him further away. He still wasn't sure what he was going to say. Did he appear and act as if it had never happened? Did he take Naruto aside and apologize? That wouldn't work. Naruto didn't believe in words. Kakashi could tell Naruto that things were going to change until he was blue in the face, but none of it mattered unless he actually showed his student that he had heard and acknowledged what he'd said. He popped onto the training ground, waving a hand. Yo! Are you on time? Sakura frowned at him. Are you sick or something? We have a lot of training to do, so I wanted to get a jump start on it, Kakashi replied cheerfully, desperately ignoring the venomous aura from Naruto. Sakura, I've increased your physical fitness menu, so go get started on that. Sakura just looked at him warily for a long moment, before moving slowly to follow his instructions. He was still half an hour late. Should she really be so suspicious? Sasuke, I got those weights so you can continue working on your speed. Your elemental affinity is right on, so we should take advantage of that. He handed over the scroll to his student, catching the looks that he was sending to Naruto. He couldn't decipher them, but Sasuke soon abandoned them both to go work on his own fitness course. Kakashi looked at his final student, but Naruto wouldn't meet his eyes, just staring angrily at the ground. This was Kakashi's fault. He'd failed his student and lost his trust. We're stepping up your bloodline limit training. Naruto still didn't look at him. I spoke to Guy about an appropriate menu for you. There was a twitch at the mention of the other jounin. Your taijutsu is easily high chunin level, and your ninjutsu could blow most chunin out of the water with your reserves alone. You've managed to keep up with the speed of your bloodline limit recently, so now we need to grow both together. There was nothing he could say to fix what he broke, but he would show Naruto that he had listened. Your teammates won't be able to keep up with you, so we'll work on it separately for now, he continued. It might be good for you to spar with Sasuke occasionally, since he is also training his body for speed, but we can see how it goes. Naruto shoved his hands into his pockets, but he nodded in acknowledgement. That was more than Kakashi was expecting to get out of him at this stage. Do you have anything you want to work on? He asked directly. The kid shrugged, and Kakashi accepted that was as much as Naruto would give him right now. That was okay. Kakashi fully intended to fix things. He may never be able to regain that trust, but he could at least do right by his students starting now. Shikamaru sighed at the sight of Team 7 approaching. They were half an hour late, which Asuma-sensei hadn't been bothered about in the slightest, so Shikamaru was forced to listen to Ino whine about waiting around and the audacity of Sakura on making her wait. Chuji was on his last bag of snacks and starting to look worried. Something had happened with the Yamanaka recently, and she had yelled at them during training a lot louder than usual. He'd seen her training much harder than before, and she only mentioned Sasuke a couple of times a day. It was a massive difference from the 10 times an hour they'd had before. He had no idea what inspired this change in his female teammate other than the fact it had involved Sakura in some way. He was still under the impression that they were bitter rivals over their precious Sasuke-kun, and Ino hadn't told them otherwise. It was damn troublesome. She'd nagged too much before she'd gotten the whole training thing in her head. He didn't know how this was going to go. He hadn't seen Sasuke or Sakura since graduation, and he didn't know about their third teammate. It was someone from the Genin forces who'd graduated a while ago, and Shikamaru wondered how they were faring with Sakura. Unlike Ino, she had the object of her obsession well within reach. Sasuke wasn't any easier to work with, preferring to work solo as much as he could physically get away with, so Shikamaru wasn't sure how their team dynamic was going to be. While he was glad they'd finally turned up and Ino would finally stop whining, he was sure this mission would be a drag. He wasn't sold on Ino, but her alone was way better than whatever baggage Team 7 was going to drag in with them. You're early, Kakashi, Asuma-sensei called out, causing his team's heads to snap to him in disbelief. I told you the meeting time only an hour earlier than the real time. Asuma, I have to keep you on your toes, the other Jounin-sensei called back. He was pretty tall, with spiky gravity-defying silver hair and his face mostly hidden by a slanted hitayate and a black face mask that covered from the bridge of his nose to beneath his Chunin vest. He was slouched over and everything about him screamed relaxed. His genin trailed behind him. Sasuke looked exactly the same as he had in the academy, scowl and all. Sakura had changed a little. She wore her long pink hair up into a high bun and wore a practical red battle dress with black leggings beneath. It had dirt smudged on it, which was something Shikamaru didn't think he'd ever see on Sakura. She'd been insane about looking her best for Sasuke-kun. The third genin was the one who caught his attention. He recognized him. It had been a few years, but it was definitely the boy from the Nara forest back then. He'd had a deer rank to round up the deer for their vet checkups and struggled with the last few fawns. He hadn't changed much, still in black shinobi trousers tied with bandages at the bottom, his black sandals and sleeveless black shirt. The bandages were a shade of orange, which was new. Black fingerless gloves and black bracers to his elbow covered his thin, defined arms, and he was wearing his loose sleeveless orange hoodie this time. He was shorter than both Sakura and Sasuke and had recently shaved down the sides of his head, leaving the blonde spikes a bit longer on the top. He also had two swords strapped to his back that he didn't have before. Why was he with them? He'd told Shikamaru he was an apprentice, which meant he didn't have a team. Forehead. Ino yelled out, pointing accusingly at Sakura. "Hi, Ino pig," Sakura waved back calmly and Shikamaru blinked. That wasn't what was supposed to happen. What had that Jounin-sensei done to her? Right, Asuma-sensei lit up another cigarette. We should head out to the farm. There's a lot to do and we have until sunset. Shikamaru remained lying on the grass, shifting his gaze back to the lovely clouds floating by. He didn't like deer ranks, and he especially didn't like ones that involved a lot of manual labor like this one. It wasn't often that it took more than one genin team to get a deer rank done, but the ones involving the farms were infamous for it. They were just too damn big. It was such a drag. Change of plans, Kakashi announced brightly. I'll take Sakura, Sasuke, and your cute little genin for this mission, and you work with Naruto on his futon techniques. He needs some help applying it to his kunai, and you're the best in Konoha. I'm the only one in Konoha, you mean? Asuma blew out a puff of smoke. Hey, why does he get to skip the stupid mission? Ino snapped, crossing her arms and staring furiously at the blonde genin. Naruto, Shikamaru remembered, glared back at Ino, and his blue eyes were just as hostile and grumpy as they had been back in the forest. He couldn't imagine the guy ever smiling. Naruto has been a genin for a few years now, and deer ranks are a waste of his time. He's done enough of them, Kakashi answered, seemingly unfazed by Ino's response. Hyade's working with him on his kenjutsu, but he needs more control over his futon, which is more your territory. Naruto looked just as surprised as Asuma-sensei about this turn of events. Wary blue eyes turned to Asuma-sensei. I mean, if you're happy with that, Asuma-sensei shrugged, letting out another puff of smoke. Kakashi is more than capable of overseeing the D rank on his own. Naruto didn't look convinced. This is such a drag, Shikamaru sighed. He didn't want to pick up the slack of losing a person. Naruto's gaze turned to him and there was a spark of recognition, although the blonde kept quiet. Come now, children, Kakashi began waving his arms and Shikamaru reluctantly stood, shoving his hands into his pocket. We have a lot to do and we're running late. That was your fault, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura spoke up. Let's go. Kakashi ignored her, pulling out an orange book from a pouch and immediately sticking his nose into it. No time to waste. Sakura rolled her eyes and Sasuke stomped ahead, his mood by some miracle being even worse than usual. Shikamaru fell into step beside Chuji as Ino bounded forward to start harassing Sakura. He looked back to see Naruto and Asuma-sensei staring at each other, although he couldn't read their expressions from here. Whatever, it wasn't any of his business and he had enough to think about with this stupid D rank. What he wouldn't give to just ditch them and go stare at the clouds somewhere, but then Ino and his mother would be on his case and one was bad enough. Being a shinobi was so damn troublesome. Lee bounced along the road, his beloved teammates not far behind him. It was such a beautiful day for training. He was so blessed to have been placed on a team with Gai-sensei. He felt like a completely different person than he had been only a year ago, and it was all due to his sensei and power of youth. He was determined to make his teacher proud and show him that Lee could uphold the legacy of youth. He was lucky to have his teammates too. 1010 was much more confident than she had been when they were first assigned to a team together, and while Niji had not gotten any friendlier, he worked hard and met Lee with the same intensity and determination that Lee did. It truly felt like they were becoming rivals, like Guy-sensei and his rival, and Lee was over the moon. He would have to continue to work hard and show that the power of taijutsu was more than enough to compete with any opponent Lee faced. Guy-sensei said he would be running late. Lee, 1010 called out from behind him. There's no reason to rush. We must get there early so we can appropriately warm up, he called back, turning so he was walking backwards. Niji remained silent. Lee had noticed that he had been unhappier recently, but he could not think of a cause to his teammates' suffering. Niji was so strong and Lee was honored to be his rival, but there was a weight on Niji's shoulders that he refused to talk about. It was not Lee's place to ask about it, but he could at least be there for his rival if he ever wished to share the burden. Is someone already there? He turned to look into the training ground and grinned as he watched Naruto swing a sword, the metal cutting through the rock in front of him like it was butter. He had seen the pair of swords strapped to Naruto's back, but he had not seen them in use before. He had not appeared to notice their arrival, and Lee resisted the urge to call out, knowing the blonde would stop the moment he did. Naruto was someone he looked up to a lot. He was the first to inspire Lee, long before he was assigned to Guy-sensei. He told Lee that he should never give up. If he cannot use chakra, then he should work hard and find alternative ways of fighting. He had not expressed it in those exact words, but Lee understood the feeling behind them. Naruto was the hardest work that Lee had ever had the privilege to work with, even beyond himself and his teammates. Lee could only aspire to work as hard and become as strong as Naruto. The match from when they first formed their team was still fresh in his mind, and he knew he still had a long way to go before he could properly challenge Guy-sensei's first student. Naruto was not the friendliest shinobi, but Lee did not see that as a negative. Naruto preferred to show his strength through his actions rather than his words, and that only made Lee admire him more. Naruto was not a man of wasted words. He was a pillar of strength, and Lee would win him over one day with his own strength. He just had to keep working hard until the day he could meet the genin on equal footing. Naruto's dismissal of him did hurt sometimes, but Lee knew that Naruto's trust was not easily won. He was willing to work hard and prove himself worthy with the power of youth. How can a sword cut through rock like that? He asked 1010, assuming that she would know. Would it not break? Futon, breathed 1010, her brown eyes sparkling. Those with an affinity can apply to the edge of blades to make them sharper, but it's not common in Konoha. My family's shop has only made chakra-conducting blades for one jounin before. Lee turned back, but he couldn't see anything special on the blade. Naruto was incredible. He could have just focused on kenjutsu, but he pushed himself a step further, just like he did every time. Naruto is truly in the springtime of his youth. Lee grinned as Naruto's head snapped towards them. What are you doing here? He growled, sheathing the sword as they approached. Guy-sensei told us to meet him here for training, 1010 explained, her eyes still on the blade that was now being slung across Naruto's back. Where did you get those? I stole them. Lee could not tell if he was serious or not. The blonde's face was blank and his response was completely deadpan. 1010 did not appear to know how to respond to that either. You should not expect a civil response from him, Niji spoke up for the first time. He cannot get past his own pettiness to attempt a normal conversation. Naruto scoffed. Rich coming from you, he sneered. You can't go a fucking sentence without putting someone down for your own ego. Tension bubbled between them, and Lee was not sure what the right approach was. It was evident that something had transpired between the two when Lee and 1010 had not been present, but Lee could not think of anything that could cause this level of animosity between two comrades. Do you wish to join us in training today, Naruto-kun? Lee tried. He did not expect the blonde to agree, but he knew he could never give up on trying to reach out to the blonde. Guy-sensei will be along shortly and he would be thrilled to see you. I would rather die. Such commitment. Lee grinned, deciding that he would only try and take the positives out of this, just like Gai-sensei did. I will have to keep working hard for your acknowledgement then. Naruto stared at him for a long moment before shaking his head. Whatever, knock off. He turned on his heel and stalked out of the training ground. Lee grinned. Naruto's temper had not sparked and he had not threatened Lee even once. That was progress. He was still not willing to engage with them and he and Niji appeared to be on terrible terms, but he could feel like he was one step closer to his goal of taking on equal footing with Naruto and winning his trust. One day he would be able to count the blonde among his friends and together they could blossom into their springtime of youth. Naruto carefully ran the oiled cloth over the metal, avoiding the sharpened edge. He was finally starting to feel like the blades were becoming an extension of himself, just like Hayate-sensei said they should. The sword gleamed in the early morning sun and fresh spring air curled over his seated form as he worked on his weapons. He tried to spend as little time in Sasuke's flat as possible, knowing his teammates' patience wouldn't last forever. He was still surprised that he let him stay past one night, but he wasn't willing to push it. He wasn't going to spend his saving on an inn, and with the occasional rain showers, he also didn't fancy sleeping in the forest. He was full capable, he had all of his camping equipment for missions after all, but he would be too on guard to sleep properly and it was just a hassle he didn't need right now. He only really went to Sasuke's to sleep, but the arrangement was working. It was actually working a lot better than he thought it would. He'd always thought he would hate sharing space with someone else, but Sasuke was quiet and tidy and they only spoke to talk about training or shinobi-related stuff. He didn't try to pry or make Naruto spill his guts, and that was all he wanted. He dumped some tomatoes into Sasuke's fridge every so often and cleaned up after himself, so he supposed that was enough to keep Sasuke from kicking him out. He hadn't told Kakashi about his change of address and he hadn't registered it with the records department either. No one had come looking for him and Sasuke wouldn't say anything, so it was a non-issue. He didn't see the point in trying to find a new place when he was going to be leaving soon anyway. He'd organized his gear and his savings with storage scrolls so his entire life currently fit into one rucksack. Whenever they finally got a C rank out of the village, he was ready. There wasn't really anything left for him in the village anyway. Gai-sensei had his team. Sasuke had his whole, kill his brother, ambitions. Kakashi would have one less student to worry about. Hayate-sensei wouldn't be that bothered since they hadn't known each other that long. He no longer had a landlady to worry about and he didn't have roots with any part of the village. The villagers would probably hold another festival when they found out he was gone. The old man would be pissed and send the ANBU after him, but the risk was worth it. He was suffocating in this place. He didn't belong here and there was a whole world out there to explore. The short time he'd spent in the capital during his own first C rank had never left him, and every opportunity he'd gotten to leave the village had only fed his desire to see what was out there, a world where nobody cared who Uzumaki Naruto was or about his past. He took the cloth off the blade and inspected it carefully. The metal was designed to be able to tolerate chakra, and since Asuma had shown him how to generate futon blades, it had quickly become his new obsession. His bloodline limit worked well with Kenjutsu, and this was just a sharper, deadlier version of Kenjutsu. He hadn't been sure about Asuma at first, but the man was even more laid back than Kakashi and he didn't try to abuse his authority or anything. He taught Naruto what he needed to know and left him to it. He liked that in a teacher. He hadn't shown Hayate-sensei yet, knowing that the man would tell him that he had improved his basic skills first and master the foundation before he went adding shit. He'd gone through this before with Kakashi and adding ninjutsu to his taijutsu, but he would rather practice it now so it was usable for when he struck out on his own. Kakashi had been better recently about the training, but Naruto couldn't bring himself to fully trust it. He was being allowed to train more to his actual level and he was no longer forced to go on D ranks with his teammates. Sasuke had made it a point to let Naruto know how stupid D ranks were every evening, and Naruto shared his own horror stories from when he had to do them alone with Gai-sensei. Kakashi had also stopped the teamwork exercises, which had been a huge relief to Naruto, but he couldn't help but feel it wouldn't last. Something would come up to ruin it all, whether it was being barred from the Chunin exams yet another year or Sakura never managing to reach a level where they could work effectively as a team, he didn't know. He just knew this couldn't last. Kakashi was trying, he had to give that to the man. He'd trained with him for a long time and he knew him well. This teamwork thing was always going to explode in their faces, and Naruto was no closer to whatever Kakashi wanted from him. He was never going to be what Kakashi wanted him to be, and that made it even easier to leave. Oi, Dobe. Naruto peered over the edge to see Sasuke glaring at him. Good morning to you too. We're going to be late. What a travesty. How will Kakashi ever forgive us? You agreed to lightning tag yesterday, remember? We can't do that around Kakashi-sensei. Naruto blinked. He'd totally forgotten about that. Since Sasuke had started training his Raitan affinity, he'd gotten a lot faster. It was something that Naruto also needed to train, so they'd come up with lightning tag. It was essentially Sasuke chasing him to electrocute him with Raitan Jutsu and Naruto practicing evasion and using his Futon chakra to shield the parts of his body Sasuke was targeting. It had been a rough learning curve at first, but it was great training. They weren't sure if Kakashi would allow it, especially since there were a lot of injuries at first, so they just did it before he got there. Might as well take advantage of their teacher's chronic lateness. Sakura had started turning up only half an hour before Kakashi, working on her own training somewhere else, so they had plenty of time to do their own thing. Fuck, he swore, sheathing the blade and slinging both on his back. You still owe me a new pair of pants for last time. You should have dodged. That's not what you said when I shredded your jacket. That's because I'm meant to tag you, not the other way around. You got way too close. Next time don't land on me. Naruto followed the other genin down the side of the building, bickering all the way down. There might be some things he would miss about Konoha. Naruto crossed his arms, tapping his foot on the wooden floor as they waited to receive their mission. They should have had a C rank by now. It had been a few months since graduation and he was itching for a mission. Every day in Konoha felt like another day for someone to figure out his plans and keep him in the village permanently. Next is Team 7, we have a painting mission, gardening, babysitting. No way. Naruto stepped forward, holding the Chunin's gaze. It was the guy that accused him of stealing the forbidden scroll, with the scar across his nose. It had been a shit night, and after being rightfully cleared by the interrogation unit and flipping the Chunin the bird, he'd had to go back out and find the stupid cat. He did not have fond feelings for this Chunin, and he was not about to put up with this bullshit. Give us a C rank. Naruto. Kakashi started. No, Kakashi. Naruto whirled around to glare at the Jounin sensei. We've been doing dumbass D ranks for months. We're ready for a C rank. I know you are, Kakashi sighed. Sasuke could beat half the Chunin in the village and Sakura is not as useless as she was when she graduated, Naruto continued. We are all ready for this, so just fucking let us. Kakashi blinked. Naruto knew what he'd said could be taken as the first and only compliment he'd ever given his female teammate, but C ranks weren't that hard, even Sakura should be capable of making it back alive. I guess we're going on a C rank then, Kakashi I smiled. Okay then, Naruto nodded, not sure what to do now. He'd expected more of a fight. Can I say something? Naruto frowned. He didn't think the Chunin got an opinion on this. I just wanted to apologize to you, Naruto, Irika continued. I made assumptions that day that were unfair. I promised to try and be better in the future. I haven't seen you since then, so I wanted to take this chance to apologize now before you head out of the village. Naruto froze, not sure what to do here. Why the fuck the guy would even apologize was escaping him, and he wasn't sure what to say in return. It was unlikely that Irika meant it. The question was why even do it at all. Here, Irika handed Kakashi a scroll, stealing a look at a silent Naruto. You will escort Tazuna, a bridge master, back to his home in the land of waves. It should take about a week to get there, so prepare for 2. The rest of the information is in the scroll. Naruto grinned. This was it. This was his chance. Sasuke shot him a look, but he ignored it. Let's go then. Naruto clapped his hands. Where is this guy? The door behind them slammed open and Naruto watched an old guy stumble in. The stench of alcohol was almost overwhelming. He clutched a brown bottle in one hand as he leaned the other on the doorframe. Bleary, dark eyes glared at them over the rim of thin, wire glasses, and his gray beard did nothing to hide the sneer he sent their way. His olive tunic was disheveled, barely tucked into loose tan trousers. What's this? It's just a bunch of darn squirts, he slurred. You're so tiny. Are you really shinobi? Naruto clenched his fists but kept his opinion to himself. He couldn't afford to lose this mission, even if he had to put up with this pathetic geezer. I can assure you that there are wonderful shinobi, Kakashi replied cheerfully. They are more than capable of protecting you. The short one looks like he would rather stab me. Tazuna waved a bottle in Naruto's direction. That's just what his face looks like. Naruto scowled, unimpressed. We can meet in front of the front gates in half an hour, Kakashi continued. You guys know what to pack. Naruto took the chance to leave, Sasuke and Sakura not far behind him. He could do this. He just had to put up with the old man long enough to find an opportunity to slip away. A smile found its way back onto his face as he realized this could very well be the last time he would step foot in Konoha. He had to do this. This would be his best chance to finally escape the village once and for all. Sakura hefted her backpack to rest more comfortably on her shoulders. They'd been walking for days now, Konoha long faded behind them, and she'd finally begun to relax. She'd been so nervous, leaving the village for the first time and on a C-rank mission too. She wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but she couldn't speak up and let her teammates down. She was more than aware that she was the weak link in this team, and while she had been working hard to try and change that, she knew she still had a long way to go. Her physical training was paying off, at least as she'd been able to keep up the whole time. They were walking at civilian pace due to Tazuna-san, but she didn't feel very tired and knew she could probably keep walking all night too. It was nice to see her training finally show itself after so many grueling hours of working on her own. She's also expected a mission outside the mission to be more exciting. It had been day after day of walking and the scenery was starting to blend together. She knew she was supposed to be on alert as part of the bodyguarding mission, but it was hard to maintain that after days of nothing. The most entertaining thing had been watching Naruto hold himself back from lynching the bridge builder who'd done nothing but drink and complain the entire journey. It was actually quite nice to see his ire directed at someone else, especially since she had also grown tired of listening to their client whine. Did the scroll say we had to deliver him alive? Naruto hissed beneath his breath. That's a given on a bodyguarding mission, dobe, Sasuke-kun muttered back, although he didn't look happy about it. I would help hide the body, she offered, smiling awkwardly as the two boys looked at her. Naruto's blue eyes watched her for a moment before he nodded slightly, his eyes turning back to the road. It was such a minor thing, but Sakura couldn't help the glow of pride. It hadn't been easy to get Naruto to acknowledge her, and he still hadn't really, but she could tell that he respected her efforts in training. Despite first impressions, Naruto wasn't a mean or malicious person. He didn't suffer fools and would not tolerate someone who tried any less than their best. It had taken some time for Sakura to see that. She was actually sort of grateful to him. He had pushed her in a way the academy and her teachers never had, and she could feel the difference in herself. She had by no means given up on winning Sasuke-kun's heart, but she'd realized that Sasuke-kun valued strength above everything else. She suspected it was why he and Naruto got on so well, although she knew that they'd known each other for much longer than they would admit. It made her feel like the odd one out. They trained together, leaving her out, and it was frustrating. She felt like she couldn't ask to join, she would just slow them down as she was now. It was a weird combination of feelings. She often found herself wishing she'd put in more effort in the academy. She was the top kunoichi, but she knew it was her paper test scores that had pushed her into that position. She was passable in the practical shinobi arts, but knowing what she did now, she'd barely scratched the surface back then. She had never pushed herself enough. It was hard, but she was trying to make up for it now. Their team dynamic had settled into something that wasn't uncomfortable, like it had been in the first few weeks. Sakura knew that her teammates didn't see her at the same level, but they didn't put her down or tell her she couldn't do it. Naruto wasn't nice about it, and Sasuke generally didn't acknowledge her existence, but she knew they accepted her efforts. It wasn't anything like she'd imagined her team when she'd been in the academy, but there was still time. "So how did you two actually meet?" Sakura asked. "You've never actually said." "I told you," Naruto replied, appearing as bored as her. "I didn't drop him off a building." He answered her, without any reluctance or insults. He must be more bored than she thought. "Like you could've if you tried," Sasuke-kun rolled his eyes. "I took you up that building and I was more than capable of throwing your ass off," Naruto retorted, but it was more playful than anything. She wasn't sure she'd ever seen that from him before. "You were only a baby academy student back then. You're younger than me, dope. What's your point?" Sakura watched the exchange, things even less clear than they were before. She may never get to the bottom of this. She stepped over the puddle absent-mindedly, frowning at the ground. Would her teammates ever let her in? How hard did she have to work before she was seen as one of them? They'd only taken a few more steps before there was a splashing sound behind them. She started to turn and only managed to catch a glimpse of two figures dressed in black before a long, spiked chain wrapped around Kakashi-sensei, trapping him in place. Two foreign shinobi held the ends of the chains out of matching metal gauntlets, and Sakura's heart leaped into her throat as they pulled. Blood splattered onto the road as their teacher was torn apart with a horrifying squelch, and Sakura felt the burn of bile in the back of her throat as she stared in horror. The two shinobi barely paused as they flung themselves towards Naruto, the chain held between them to capture her teammate just like they had Kakashi-sensei. Naruto looked unfazed by their teacher's death and had already drawn his dual blades when she hadn't been looking. It was the calmest she'd ever seen him. There was no scowl or frown and sneer, just focused blue eyes that tracked the deadly chain closely. Naruto suddenly swung one of his swords into the chain and rammed it into one of the trees next to the road, the blade and chain sinking more than halfway into the thick trunk. It caught the enemy Nin off guard as they were suddenly pulled to a halt, the chain pulled taut and pulling them off balance. Sakura barely had time to blink before Sasuke suddenly appeared, landing on their shoulders. She watched as he gripped their arms, kicking back into their faces. The chain detached from their gauntlets and they dove to either side. Sasuke landed gracefully into crouch where they'd been stood only a moment ago. Her gaze was torn from her crush when the enemy Nin flanked and ran towards her. She pulled a kunai from her pouch, assuming a defensive stance in front of Tazuna-san. She may not be as strong as her teammates, but she could do this. She had to protect Tazuna-san. She had a few seconds to get a good look at them. One was covered by full-length, ragged black cloak while the other had a baggy, tan tunic over camouflage trousers. They both had a black gas mask over their lower faces, and their kiri-hitae had metal horns attached, keeping their long, greasy black hair out of their faces. They lunged at her, clawed gauntlets outstretched. Sakura barely had a chance to take a swipe at them with her kunai when blue filled her vision, Sasuke-kun's back blocking her view. She looked over her shoulder just in time to see Naruto swing his remaining sword, sinking it into the side of the enemy Nin with the ragged cloak. Naruto tore it free with a spray of blood and kicked the Nin to the side, before spinning to target the second. She'd never seen him work with his blades before. He had another teacher for that, and he practiced different skills when he was with them, so she hadn't realized how skilled he'd become with them. He moved the sword like it was an extension of his arm, and he turned on his feet like gravity didn't affect him. She caught the flash of silver in his eyes as he swung the sword up, intent on finishing the fight then and there. A forearm reached across the enemy's neck and jerked him out of the way of Naruto's blade. Sakura felt a lump in her throat as she saw their teacher, alive and well. She didn't know how, but right now, she didn't care. Now, Naruto, we need to keep at least one of them alive for questioning, he drawled, as if he hadn't been torn apart in front of their eyes. The other one is still breathing, Naruto argued back, wiping the blood off his blade with said shinobi's cloak. He wasn't moving and Sakura didn't think he would be breathing much longer. You guys did well, Kakashi I smiled, dragging the limp body in his arms over to one of the trees by the side of the road. Your speed training is really paying off and you did well to stand your ground. He was looking at Sakura with that last statement and she felt the warm glow of pride wash over her. She had protected Tazuna-san. She may not have done any of the fighting but she hadn't frozen up or held the team back. Naruto tore his second sword out of the tree, the chain falling to the ground with a loud clank. Sasuke-kun shoved his hands into his pockets beside her but she caught the way he was looking at Kakashi-sensei. He wasn't as unaffected by their teacher's trick as he wanted to act. She'd been watching him long enough to know. Was the whole dramatic death scene necessary? Naruto asked, slinging both his sheathed swords back into a cross on his back. It was a little much. I wanted to see how my cute little genin would do on their own, Kakashi-sensei replied casually, like he hadn't added years of stress onto Sakura. He had tied up the remaining Chunin and Sakura was making a point not to look at the prone body in the middle of the road. The real question is why two high-level Chunin would be targeting a bridge builder, especially on a C-rank mission. All eyes turned to the sweating bridge builder. Naruto frowned as the old man finished his tale of woe. So this bastard Gato, who was some sort of big, important business guy, had pretty much taken over the land of waves and sucked all the money out of them because he had control over the water and no one could really sneak a boat past him. So they were gonna build a bridge? The bridge would mean they could get other business that didn't involve Gato so he wouldn't be able to continue being a bastard but Gato knows this so has been threatening people into giving up on the bridge using some second-rate thugs. So you want us to protect you while you build the bridge? Naruto concluded. Yes, Tazuna nodded, having sobered but considerably since the attack of the demon brothers. We've made a lot of progress but people are scared. The problem is, Tazuna-san, that you lied to us, Kakashi drawled but Naruto could tell he was actually pissed. This is a B rank minimum, maybe an A rank. You only requested a C rank which is why they sent a genin team. This mission is out of our current capabilities. We could only afford a C rank, Tazuna pleaded. Please, we need your help. I say let's do it. All eyes turned to Naruto. We're already here, he continued. They need help and we can do it. There's no point in going all the way back to Konoha to send another team that they can't afford anyway. That's nice of you, said Kakashi, but he was looking at Naruto a little too intensely. He prayed that the Jounin wouldn't figure him out. They couldn't go back to Konoha. He'd already made it this far and this mission was the perfect opportunity to leave Konoha in the dust. There was also a small part of him that wanted to stick it to this Gato guy. Naruto knew rich bullies and he hated them with every fiber of his being. Continuing the mission was a win-win for him. I'm with Naruto, Sasuke spoke up, crossing his arms. We can handle it. They looked at a nervous Sakura. She hesitated. I'm with my team. We should continue with the mission. Naruto honestly hadn't expected her to agree. He thought this mission was a bit much for her at her current level but he wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. We all agree, he said, meeting Kakashi's eye. We're continuing the mission. Kakashi met his gaze for a long moment before blinking, looking over to Tazuna. You've still got us then. Tazuna grinned. Thank you. Thank you so much. What should we do with them? Naruto waved a hand over the enemy Nin. One was definitely dead by now and the one Kakashi had tied up and interrogate didn't look like he was going to wake up anytime soon. We can collect their bounties when we get back, Kakashi shrugged, throwing a scroll over to Naruto. He was your kill so you can take the bounty. Naruto grinned. The money would come in handy. He should probably feel something more after taking a man's life but it wasn't his first, That had been not long after he'd started C ranks with Guy-sensei. He couldn't even remember the man's face. Nice. He ignored Sakura's ill look as he stored the body into the scroll, Kakashi doing the same with the other Chunin. We're not far from the boat now, Tazuna said. We can make it by nightfall and use the darkness as cover from Gato's men. Naruto shoved the scroll into his backpack and moved to follow his teammates back down the road. Things were still going to plan. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Want early audio-only versions? Join me on Patreon, link in description. I'm Fox Sage. See you next time.